Good evening, YouTube. My name's James PFP. I go by James, in case you haven't heard. I've been thinking about how to do different kinds of content or different types of content on YouTube over a long period of time. A lot longer before 2017 occurred. That's how I'm going to preface tonight's Pitchfork and Flaming Torches Banjocast. I don't know if I'm going to play any music at all. I could, the mood may seize me. It's very much like a seizure. And once it's passed, I'll get back to the thing I was trying to talk about. Tonight I've got notes. These didn't come via email. No email involved in these notes whatsoever. No emails. No contact from anybody using the email system. None. That's the first item on tonight. I received an update on a character I've been following. Only very how to put it? Only from a side angle. Way off to the side, laterally speaking, peripherally visioned. I picked this one up. And I'm going to get to it number one tonight. And anyone who's gotten to know me in the last, 6 months, and who happens to be listening and who is interested in content related to Charlottesville, this is the item number one for me tonight. Definitely. Big news, big news. As far as I'm concerned, it's the biggest news I've heard since. And I've been watching a bunch of different news more than I used to. So I got a bit of an appreciation now for what that might mean. I'm going to make a small change to what I've got done on my screen here in Open Broadcaster so as to facilitate the next bit of the process as I load a piece of media on a media player, which is suitable. I recorded this earlier from, I guess it's a Periscope. Stream. The Periscope belonging to Faith Goldie. This is where I recorded it. I used Open Broadcaster to do so. So the dark room has its stamp on it. It's about an 8-minute clip. I stopped and started a few times. You can see it in the background over here. Let's play. Here's Faith.
Hey there, fam. I just wanted to have a quick word on the events that are going on surrounding the April conference in Phoenix and Kilroy. For those of you who follow my tweets, you know that I have withdrawn from the conference. Hi guys, I love you all as well. Sorry, I'm driving, so I'm trying to keep my eyes on the road, but also say hello to everyone.
Hi, Faith.
So I've decided to withdraw from the conference, which was not something that I really wanted to do, but I've been told that I should get on camera. So that's my rosary. That's like going back and forth. I should get on camera and all.
Item number 2. I wouldn't have asked, but okay, that's her rosary. Don't know how she got it, who gave it to her, sentimental value only, or...
Also further articulate kind of where I'm coming from, so folks know. I mean, you could tell that there was blood in the water when Tim Pool, neutral Tim Pool, said this is too much.
Too much, huh?
That NDA, that now infamous NDA non-compete has been leaked, and I'd urge you to go read it for yourself. Tune into Tim Pool's YouTube channel.
I won't be,
because he goes through it there. The thing's a farce. I mean,
okay, that's easily easily arrived at word. I've used that word many times in the past.
The majority of the headliners there, actually all of them, have spoken in various locations before. Never in my life, I mean, I've been given contracts, but I've never been given an NDA non-compete that spans several years to a 100-mile radius.
Huh? Now, I've been thinking about this one and why it would be that there be why it would possibly be that an NDA of that nature, an NDA and non-compete agreement with explicit in the same letters that they're going to talk about. In fact, she doesn't show the letter, but the letter has been shown elsewhere, and I have seen the contents of the letter during today's research period, hey? And the non-compete bit, there might even be a bit of wiggle room. It's the non-disclosure bit for 3 years for some reason.
I mean, that's cuckoo banana cakes.
That's cuckoo banana cakes, according to Faith Goldie.
It's not serious. Yes, no one who is serious about
Styx, Hex, and Hammer has no problem with the NDA. Now, I can imagine that there's reasons why an NDA would cause concern, like of that long a period of time, and with a radius of geographic space described around it. That may have concern for somebody like Faith Goldie.
Putting on an event would have okayed that, whether you have legal expertise or not. That was a bit of a meme. So, I mean, all conspiracy theories as to, you know, them trying to plot to get certain characters out of their side. I had never been given the NDA, although I had caught wind of it before it had indeed gone public. So, I mean, I was kind of scratching my head over there, and I had sent Based Mama, who I don't actually know. I'm not too sure who she is or what she's about, but this based part of her name has become sort of a meme. I'd sent her an email saying, okay, so what's going on? Because if we circle back to several weeks ago, I was listed on the website, and I believe at the time of taping this, I still remained there. But so were folks like Baked Alaska. Now, Millennial Woes, for reasons we don't need to get into, was not listed on the website, but was indeed confirmed to be one of the scheduled speakers. So Woes and Baked reach out to me and say, yeah, we've been disinvited. So that's a little bit sketchy. So I reach out to some of the organizers, not Based Mama at this point, because frankly I didn't know who she was, and I didn't even know that she was part of the event organizing staff. So I reach out to them and they say, look, there was a scheduling conflict. And I honestly, despite making this video, I'm not into drama. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to take you on good faith. I see that there are largely skeptics here, but you've got some edgier folks, you've got some members.
She's referring to fucking notes as she's driving and doing a video
Of the dissident.
And they say that they don't drive crazy in Ontario. I mean,
so to speak, that are coming on board, and you're kicking some of them off. Maybe it is just scheduling, because of course other members were still listed there. That are part of perhaps the edgier right and not necessarily.
You know, I should pull over and have a nap if you're that tired, Faith.
The skeptic community. So, in good faith, I trusted them and I believed them. And then James Alsop, good old James Alsop from American First Media, subscribe if
Another plug.
you don't already.
Another plug.
He submits a panel discussion that he had hoped to partake in, which would involve myself, one Brittany Pettibone, I believe Martin Sellner was one of the speakers, and Lauren Southern. And we had hoped to discuss identity.
So select panel on identitarianism, is it?
As an identitarianism,
It is.
as it pertained to various jurisdictions, namely the US, Canada, and Europe. And what better people to do all of that than us, who have had all these various, you know,
every and all of us.
experiences, not the least of which are, you know, guys like Martin Sellner, Defend Europe, etc. And as I understand it, that was kiboshed, and all of this is
Kiboshed. Kiboshed means cabbaged sometimes.
is documented email format, not emails that are mine to share, and
To put the kibosh on means to finish it off.
those who were party to this email transaction might inevitably come out and do just that. But we were told that identity and identitarianism was not to be discussed. Under no circumstances would it be discussed at Kilroy.
Now, this is her way of telling it, but you know, I don't have any reason to believe exactly every word that she says at any given point in time, and I don't necessarily believe her characterization there. She's pleased that she's going to be able to get away with it, quite obviously, but hey, I've seen that look on her face before. So I'm not entirely sure. Let's listen to that again.
Transaction might inevitably come out and do just that. But we were told that identity and identitarianism was not to be discussed. Under no circumstances would it be discussed at Kilroy. Okay.
That's part of the movements that they're organizing against or trying to speak against at Kilroy is the reason why they're surprised and frankly shocked, perhaps, that this particular collection of people, who she might not have not entirely included everybody in, this group of people are then therefore trying to make themselves known at. They want to set up a panel discussion. We want to take over an afternoon. I don't know what, but that's what she's talking about.
So I just kind of sat on my hands for a little while and thought, well, what do we do here?
Sat on her hands a little while.
Maybe we can use a podium to discuss kind of near customer issues, if you will. You know, when given a podium, let's make the most out of it. But then, less than 24 hours ago, James Alsop's name gets removed from the Kilroy event page. Keep in mind that all along with this fluctuating event itinerary.
Okay, there's another criticism of the actual organizers and by extension.
They're selling tickets.
Ah, bums on seats bothers her.
They still got a bunch of headliners up there, and they're still selling tickets. Okay? All of a sudden, without rhyme, reason, or warning, James has his picture, his photograph, and his name removed from the website. Okay? So I talked to James. James doesn't know what's going on.
Not me. Some other James.
Why this happened. Okay, fine. So I sent an email to Based Mama. I say, hey, some weird stuff is going on over there, y'all. What is going on? Oh, my buddy's getting disinvited. We can't talk about what we want to talk.
Excuse me a second. Did I get that right?
So I talked to James. James doesn't know what's going on. Why this happened. Okay, fine. So I sent an email to Based Mama. I say, hey, some weird stuff is going on over there, y'all. What is going on? Oh, my buddy's getting disinvited. We can't talk about what we want to talk about. James now, his picture's gone. What's going on, guys? Fill us this in. And I get a response email that is completely blank from Base Mama's account. So what does that tell me? And I responded back to her. I said, hi, it's just so you know I got a blank email. Don't know if you intended to write something in it. But indeed, nothing showed up.
She's not about drama, right?
So what that tells me, and no response to that follow-up email now, several hours ago.
So she's quite eager to continue on with something, yeah? Yeah, like agenda, whatever.
That tells me that is a confirmation of receipt. She did get all of my questions and queries and outstanding issues. And she has chosen not to respond to them. You know, they say where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'm not going to hang around when I have a feeling...
Not on that piano wire.
...that the whole damn building's about to come crashing down. So I'm not going to wait for excuses. I'm not going to wait for some other, we're not...
So she's pulling the Gestapo card. Great.
It's here. It's, you add 1 + 1, it equals 2.
Yeah, 1 + 1 + 1 and use like a bunch of sticks, tie them all together, and it equals?
It would seem as...
Hey, old Jack, how you doing?
Though this is becoming a skeptic event, I got no beef with the skeptics. Y'all want to hold your events, do your thing. What I don't understand is why any sort of overtures to the dissident right were ever made in the first place.
So the dissident right
to sell tickets?
Is how she refers to herself.
Because if it was...
The panel included Lauren Southern, dissident rightist, or not.
Let me tell you, Baked, myself, we've got a lot of folks who are writing into us now saying that we spent $250 to come see, frankly, the dissident right speakers. And now y'all are off the list. And I'm sorry if my self-dismissal had anything to do with that, but I could not, in earnest, stand there as all of my friends...
I'm sorry, I gotta bust in here again, but old Jack, I'm pleased as punch to see this shit today. I don't know about you. Did you hear anything about this before YouTube talked about it? Or not.
And free speech crusaders, if you will, have been disinvited. And now one member of the itinerary has said to, I think it was James, it was one of the higher profile speakers, if you're not making a speech on free speech, how do you expect to basically that's why obviously your panel was shut down, is because you weren't making a speech on free speech. So am I to understand this was supposed to be 2 days of panels on free speech? No, of course not. That's asinine. Anyway, we're here now. I think that they got some, Lucy, you got some splaining to do.
Thanks a lot there, Faith.
Sorry, for a lot of you kids, you're not going to understand that.
A lot of us kids, huh?
That's for my love, Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it would be Ricky, though, not Lucy. It would be Ricky she ripped off.
No, Kilroy has some explaining to do right now. And like I said, I'm not looking for drama, but I'm also not looking for being frankly used as a pawn for ticket sales to an event, which, at least from the outside looking in, from a bird's eye view, looks to be censoring people when the very ethos of its event is supposed to be circled and indeed focused on the topic of free speech. So that's a little bit of a head scratcher, friends. Anyway, I just want to give you a little bit more of a robust explanation as to why I will no longer be listed on the Kilroy events page if that amendment has not yet taken place. But I will say this, like a phoenix from the ashes, we have heard you. We have heard the fact that folks want this event or an event like this to take place, and that there is a market to hear a bunch of us come together and talk about issues that aren't just, acceptable to the more emotionally fragile community, frankly. And so I'm hoping that everyone can look forward to hopefully an announcement sometime soon about another event.
Because now they don't have this pesky NDA or even a non-complete clause, or a non-compete clause, which was already being disputed and renegotiated. Some group had already started down that path, so there was other letters being issued, which is why she never got a letter at all at the very beginning of her explanation. But I bet you goddamn she got a letter, complained, and was waiting for another letter to sign, is the actual story of Faith Goldie here.
Where we really are going to be truly a safe space.
So if there's a question to be asked to the organizers, it's whether or not Faith already received a letter and is denying that she did. I do wish the organizers good luck and indeed better luck, because I think that there are certain really good people who are part of the organizing committee there who have very good intentions and do want to see this event come to fruition without any sort of kinks or knots in it. But regrettably, I don't know if it's a personality thing. I don't know if it's a fundamental principles thing. But there is a communication breakdown going on over there. And communication breakdown! It's not ideal, and regrettably for those Canadian radio influence. Right there.
Reasons, as they say in Dragon's Den and Shark Tank.
Ah, yes, another television reference. Thanks a lot, Faith. Woo, bye-bye. So, that's that. So, Hilljack, more of the same this evening. More of the same. I'm going to switch to this one. I can still read you, but you can't read yourself for a little while, that's all. Faith Goldie comes out and makes her announcement today, or in the last 24 hours. I'm kind of glad about that. That settles one of my bigger questions about how to think about, how literally about goes right back to some of the big questions I got on Faith Goldie in particular, and on what it is to have faith in general in something because person X decides to appropriate the personality of. Number 2 for today is all about Trump and his ongoing battle in the court of public opinion with the fake news, or with fake news. Being called fake news once upon a time, and now having turned the tables in a very pro-wrestling manner to be putting them in a headlock and leaving them there, and they've refused to tap out. It only gets more and more entertaining as they refuse to tap out. So, I guess I guess that's the one thing I've been reading in all other media sources today is the prevalence of what it is to lose the fake news battle. Might as well go over here. Hang on a second. I didn't have anything queued. I've got links drawn up and what else. And I might as well cue one of those links right now. Right, I've actually got the proof of the letter in the last one I was talking about. H.A. Goodman. Got a H.A. segment queued up here. Won't be playing it right away. Trump versus the fake news. Well, yeah. Looked at it the last couple of days ago. Certainly, I've been watching a lot. Reading it over. What is there actually extra to say about Trump versus the fake news anyway? I made one quick note on the card to jump to in case I had to jump to anything. Hey, I'm not talking about Saturday Night Live when I talk about the fake news. But it's funny that I got to make that clear before asking why it is that SNL has to take offense to Trump targeting the fake news. I'm going to explain it out for you. I'm going to try to do so without making rubber faces in a Rachel Mad Cow manner. No mad cow theism from me, okay? Saturday Night Live takes it personally at this moment in time when from the very beginning, part of its entire charm, when it was charming, if it was charming, was the weekend update. What else would you watch for? The skits, well, the skits, well, the skits, well, the skits, well, the skits, weekend update. Good, almost always good. Couldn't really go wrong with the weekend update because of the nature of news media reporting, which at the time was at a different stage of development than it is now. And it wasn't a problem to deal with what fake news was from SNL's point of view. Incredible, right? Sometimes it was criticisms of the president. Sometimes it was criticisms of Francisco Franco. I frankly care not, but I see their point one way or the other. But it wasn't only, hey? So when Trump makes a joke about the fake news, or when he makes a statement, a truthful statement about the fake news, and they take it personally, and they go out of their way to take it personally, you have to wonder what it is that motivates them to take it so personally, if not a paycheck and someone screaming at them on email. So before I get, I just got that nicely set up. This is a H.A. Goodman clip following. Going to listen to a little H.A. Goodman. Go back to the labs for this one.
My name is H.A. Goodman, and I'm an author, columnist, and journalist. To support this YouTube channel, go to my Patreon link below in the description section. Subscribe to this channel. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers, and it's because of you. Julian Assange just tweeted out something very, very interesting, and it's an article, Weekly Standard article. I remember Watergate pretty well, and I don't remember anything like this level of journalistic carelessness back then. The constant stream of bombshells that turn into duds is doing more damage to the media than anything Trump could manage. And the article is a very interesting article, and it talks about basically,
plus they're playing a younger crowd doesn't realize
covering the Trump presidency has not always been the media's finest hour, but even grading them on a curve, the month of December has brought astonishing screw-ups. Professor and vulnerable political observer Walter Russell Mead tweeted on December 8th, quote, "I remember Watergate pretty well, and I don't remember anything like this journalistic carelessness back then. The constant stream of bombshells that turn into duds is doing much more damage to damage the media than anything Trump could manage."
Here we go. We can actually do some pausing and analyzing at this very moment in time. This man says bombshell to bring up the point that bombshell is what the media uses to virtue signal the truthfulness of something, when in fact it happens to be BS bullshit, a belief system, if you will. Some other BS is being applied through the use of the word bombshell. I've heard it expressed another way, and it totally flipped me out when I heard it the first time. Made sense. Going to use it again, I thought. It's called bumper stickers, friends. It's called bumper stickers. And if you ask me, the best time to use bumper stickers is when you know for goddamn sure you're dealing with a general. Doesn't matter what side you're fighting for then, friends. As long as you know who the general is, you can slap a bumper sticker on here or there, and things might actually work out better for everybody. Anyhow.
On December 1st, ABC News correspondent Brian Ross went on air and made a remarkable claim. For months, the media have been furiously trying to prove collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Ross reported that former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who had just pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, was prepared to testify that President Trump had instructed him to contact Russian officials before the 2016 election while Trump was still a candidate. If true, it would be a game changer. But Ross's claim was inaccurate. Not true. Fake news. Later that same weekend, the New York Times ran a story about Trump's administration official Katie McFarland, charging that she lied to congressional investigators about knowledge of the Trump transition team's contact with Russia. The article went through 4 headline changes and extensive edits after it was first published, substantially weakening and backing away from the claims made in the original version. Still in that first week of December, Senator Orrin Hatch criticized the excess of federal welfare programs, saying, "I have a rough time wanting to spend billions and billions and trillions of dollars to help people who won't help themselves." The quote was taken wildly out of context. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, as well as journalists from Newsweek, Los Angeles Times, reported that Hatch was directly criticizing the Children's Health Insurance Program, with some suggesting Hatch thought children should be put to work to pay for subsidized health care. Not only was Hatch not criticizing the CHIP program, he co-wrote the recent bill to extend its funding. On December 5th, Reuters and Bloomberg reported that Special Counsel Robert Mueller had subpoenaed Deutsche Bank account records for President Trump and family members, possibly relating to business in Russia. The report was later corrected to say Mueller was subpoenaing people or entities.
Totally froze my chat on me earlier there, Jack.
Then on December 8th, another Russia bombshell turned into a dud. CNN's Manu Raju and Jeremy Arab reported Donald Trump Jr. had been sent an email on September 4th, 2016 with a decryption key to a WikiLeaks trove of hacked emails from Clinton confidant and Democratic operative John Podesta. That is, before the hacked emails were made public. WikiLeaks is widely surmised to act as widely surmised. Okay, there's no intelligence community regarding that. They don't even. I'm
not going to read this. He says, "I ain't even going to read this part."
Reports basically state we have no idea what we're talking about. Nobody knows how WikiLeaks obtained the emails. They have no evidence of anything, yet they continue to push the lie. MSNBC and CBS quickly claimed to have confirmed CNN's scoop. Within hours, CNN's report was discredited. The email was sent on September 4th, after the hacked Podesta emails had been made publicly available.
In case you haven't heard yet, I'm not actually expecting anybody in my
Weekly Standard. It's
audience,
a great article.
Current audience.
Not really
to not know this,
fan
but
of the Weekly Standard.
In the outside
it's
chance,
a great article.
Someone who's just
even
joining
in this
us.
article, there's some fake news here.
There's some fake news here.
Hacked. You're never hacked.
It is all about who owns. You don't read it.
So, the email was sent on September 14th after the Podesta emails had been made public. Give me your thoughts below. Why would you? The media, people say, "Oh, look
only
at Trump's
halfway done
favorability
here.
ratings." Oh my God! Well, the favorability ratings for the Democratic Party and media rival those of Trump's. Then you have there's another Hillary Clinton in 2020. It's called the Media and Democratic Party.
Sorry
So
to cut
whomever
that
they
off
pick-
there, but yeah, there's another Hillary Clinton. Every time I hear Hillary Clinton, I think myself, man, ask why people would vote for Hindenburg Clinton. I know, dude. I hear you. I really do. Oh, yeah. Ask why they would have voted or why they would vote for Hindenburg Clinton. Ask it. Ask the question directly. And if they ask why you're asking it that way, you say, oh, the inanity ever since. 2017 confirms it absolutely. What else do you need to know? Yeah, cool. Take a crash and reset and get things back in order. Cool. I'll talk to you later there, Hill Jack.
It's still going to be that they'll be wrapped in a cloak of media DNC deception. I don't know what you can call it, but it's just unbelievable how there's like this, the cool crowd, and all these people thinking they're fighting bigotry when in reality there's enough bigotry in the Democratic Party to last a lifetime. Ask any Democrat why Nina Turner was not allowed to speak in the Democratic National Committee. That says everything at the convention, Democratic convention. That says everything you need to know about the Democratic Party. Ask why people would vote for Hillary Clinton even though she called black youth super predators and used racism against Obama, but then would care about
you were talking about the state of the world
that Trump made about undocumented
My
immigrants
bad.
that I disagree with. When Democrats are very good at picking and choosing to promote their moral.
Sounded a little cliche is all I was saying.
You can't pick and choose. You should have your moral or ethical standards should apply to all situations. That's a whole other story. What Trump is doing is exposing the media. The media is not exposing Trump. He's in office. He will win in 2020. He's not going anywhere. It's the media that is. It's Matt Lauer. It's Brian Ross. All these people. Charlie Rose, Weinstein. It's Hollywood and the media that are being exposed, not Trump. Trump is playing all of them. And you wonder why not only Democrats, you wonder why they lost. It has nothing to do with Russia, but you wonder why they continue to discredit themselves. Had they simply just focused on Trump's policies, they could then say, look, we don't like his policies, here's why.
The funny thing is I find from channel to channel, sometimes there's no connection, even though that you're aware they watch one another, or sometimes they might talk to one another. HA, I hadn't really considered until I started thinking about the consequences of having used so much of the Hills video for Charlottesville. Lauren Southern worked for the same outlet as this guy once upon a time. This guy was let go because of his particular bent. He ends up going out on the internet and striking pretty good. He's still doing all right.
But they pushed a myth. So they told everybody Trump was going to win. That Clinton was going to win and Trump was going to lose. Trump won. Clinton and the entire media had egg on their face. They were so embarrassed, ashamed. They were appalled. Just watch the Young Turks election night meltdown from Cenk Uygur. And there's like a whole bunch of awesome election night meltdowns. If you have any, just put the link below in the comments section.
If you've got
Election night meltdowns are hilarious. 2016. Rachel Maddow's is just hilarious. It's like they're swept off their soapbox, their pedestal, their lecturing, lectern, whatever you want, And then they have to realize that, oh my God, everything we've been saying for the past year and a half turned into a Trump presidency. So they have to now double down, or they decided to double down. I actually thought that they would do something honorable and realize why they lost, but that's not the Democratic Party or the media. Anyway, give me your thoughts.
Or the media. He's not wrong. He is not wrong. Oh, the Hindenburg Clinton jokes. No, I love it. The Hindenburg. Final thing, or what I'm going to set up here on the last part, at least for the next hour or so, is a playthrough of a talk which was delivered to Google by author Neil Stephenson, September 12th, 2008. This is at the same moment in time as Occupy. No. That was several years later. 3 years later, Occupy was in full swing at this moment in time. Author Neil Stephenson visits Google's headquarters in Mountain View, California to discuss his book, Anthem. It was uploaded and presented immediately afterwards. It had 64,000 views.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's Authors at Google event. It's my pleasure to introduce Neil Stephenson. You know him as the author of Snow Crash, Cryptonomicon, and The Baroque Cycle, and he's here to talk about his latest work, Anthem. Please join me in welcoming him to Google.
Thanks. I just realized I don't have to stand behind that object because I'm wearing a wireless mic, so
I'm going to interrupt before he gets too deep into this. He was educated at MIT. I think he holds 2 degrees from there. One of them in English, one of them in math.
roam around. I hope it doesn't drive you crazy, but I do much better if I'm kind of pacing around a lot. So if it just becomes too annoying, avert your gaze. I could read from the book if anyone's got
links
a copy,
in the description for this.
Thanks. But I'm skeptical of readings as a book tour event because I think that bookish people are just a little bit different. I sometimes wonder what it was like to be at the meeting where the concept of the book tour reading gig appearance thing was first proposed. I can kind of see the PowerPoint presentation where some clever young up-and-coming executive in the media company said, you know, people who do other kinds of art are really good at making a fuss over themselves. You know, painters have gallery openings where people come in nice clothes and look at beautiful pictures and sip cocktails and write big checks. And people in the performing arts are exceptionally good at making a fuss over themselves. You're always seeing pictures of them prancing down red carpets in front of their adoring fans. And in order for publishing to compete in the cutthroat media sort of attention marketplace, we need something that can somehow compete with that. And at that point, that person probably proposed some really cool idea, which we don't know what it is because once it had gone through different layers of cost-benefit analysis and management and de-scoping, what we ended up with is that someone who never goes out in public is going to walk into a room and read out loud from a book. And the fundamental flaw in that, as I'm sure all of you sort of technically inclined,
could be anybody,
bandwidth-savvy people can already see, is that if all you want is to have the contents of the book imparted into your brain, what you really want to do is go home, sit down in your favorite chair, alone, undisturbed, and simply read the book yourself. So I've always been a bit skeptical of the reading out loud from the book thing, and if you don't mind, I'll just kind of eschew that today, and I'll say a few words about the book for those who know nothing at all about it, and then we can try to get a question and answer thing going, and that'll go slowly at first, because people will feel a bit awkward, and then it'll get rolling, and eventually the fire marshal will have to come and shut us down. So the book is entitled Anathem. It's set in the distant future of a world that whose history runs in parallel to that of Earth, but several thousand years ago, during an era pretty similar to what we're living through now, all of the sort of literate, rational people were rounded up and herded into a system of monastic communities.
What he's really saying there is the people that would like to sit down quietly in rooms by themselves with books for a period of time.
These are co-ed monasteries. But they're not allowed to reproduce. The only way to get new people into the system is by a process called collecting, which is very simple. If you're living on the outside and you're one of those kids who is frequently seen curled up in a corner reading a book, you'll be taken to the gates of the nearest monastery and dropped off. So at the time of the book, that system's been up and running for about 3,700 years. And it turns out that the two cultures have found ways to get along pretty happily, being separate from each other. The people on the inside of these
I have to interrupt here for a second. Ongoing topics, I'm going to put them into the chat right now, into the chat room. This will show obviously on the video if you're watching, but ongoing topics. It's fake news or artificial intelligence, whichever you prefer. I'm going to write these down. Fake news or artificial intelligence. It's really the same topic. If you haven't figured that out yet, we can talk about it. Or I can talk about it. Second ongoing topic. What was it?
Being separate from each other. Found ways to get along pretty happily, being separate from each other. The people on the inside of these
I got to back this up just a little.
Been up and running for about 3,700 years, and it turns out that the two cultures have found ways to get along pretty happily.
The interior culture and the exterior culture. What was I thinking about? Fake news, artificial intelligence. There was another related topic. Ongoing topic. Shit. I'll remember it.
Being separate from each other. The people on the inside of these monasteries live according to a vow of poverty. They have very simple lives. They grow their own food. They don't own anything other than a piece of cloth that they wrap around their body as a garment. And they just sit around and read and write books and think about philosophy and mathematics and science, and they do other kinds of scholarly activities. On the outside, the landscape is just sort of coast to coast, ocean to ocean, Walmarts, casinos.
I remember what it was. There's a whole bunch of things which come up with this guy. He's been writing lots of books, Neil Stephenson. There's a whole bunch of topics I would never have otherwise thought about or put into certain relationships had it not been for his hand, as it turns out. What topics do they include? Writing this one out. Freedom of expression and libertarianism. He is a very vocal libertarian in most of his texts. Curiously, he allows in the book that he's describing that pot can be consumed outside of the walls of the learning institution, but not inside. That it's frowned on the inside. and it's used in a specific way. So he is basically an anti-pot libertarian in his fiction. Whether or not he follows that through, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that one.
And the like big box retail stores, I'm sure you get the picture. Over the millennia, dark ages.
He presents as anti-corporate, but he works for Jeff Bezos.
And so on.
He works with a company
for the most part, it doesn't
for
really
Jeff
affect the
Bezos.
people who live on the inside of the walls.
He presents
so that's the basic
anti-corporate.
setup. That's the world that the book takes place in. And as the saying goes, hilarity ensues when unexpected events.
He wrote this particular book after finishing a huge series which all dealt with cryptocurrency and how important it was to be ready for it. And then wrote this one and a second one called Reamed, R-E-A-M-D-E. I found this online today too, which is incredible. Part 1 of 4, so it takes about a day or two to listen to it. I'm going to copy the link location and paste it here. It's part 1 of 4, 11 hours per part. Audible rip. This is the last book which finished it off and talks entirely about the implications of how we get to Bitcoin, but also how it can be used for good or ill. Incredible book.
Caused some changes in that basic arrangement. So to go right to the bare nerve, just in hopes of getting a good conversation going. I'm sure you've all seen the article, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" Which is in the Atlantic a couple months ago. So that must have occasioned a bit of discussion here. I'm just guessing. And so, you know, this book actually might be an interesting lens through which to think about those kinds of issues. The people on the outside of the monasteries in this world have pretty darn short attention spans, and they can't tear themselves away from their little cell phone type devices, and they don't know very much. And the people on the inside look upon them with a certain amount of horror.
He said this world, but he wasn't talking about our world. He could be talking about our world, which is why he set up his 3,700 years in some future type world that way.
And simply can't understand how anybody could live that way. So I don't have an answer. I don't know if Google's making us stupid or not, but if you noticed that article and if you're interested in those topics, you could do worse than have a look at this book as maybe a entry point for thinking about those kinds of issues. And
2017 and the inanity which follows from Hindenburg Clinton kind of suggests to me that perhaps indeed not only Google but other companies like it could be making us stupid.
And carrying that conversation forward. So with that,
I feel like the Surgeon General, the year that they finally said, well, you know what, we have to admit, if you smoke a lot of cigarettes, if you smoke cigarettes like there ain't, you know, like they're cure for cancer, you're going to be sadly mistaken. Or maybe, you know, happy at the end.
Go to Q&A.
I've been confirmed correct. Incorrect.
The big sort of logistical problem here is going to be getting your questions recorded and amplified. So there's at least one microphone person, and so
Q&A.
I think I think I'm going to leave it to your discretion as to who gets the microphone, because otherwise we'll have to be doing all this kind of.
So from your setup, what parallels do you see between your work and Atlas Shrugged?
I haven't read it.
haven't read it. That is a bit of a clap book. Either you have or haven't read it. Now, I have read it, and there is an easier criticism of it than that. But he's a libertarian as well.
I knew a few people when I was in college who tried very hard to convert me over to
Ayn Rand, objectivism?
Randian philosophy, and
Randian philosophy. Not Randy from the Trailer Park Boys. Randian philosophy, says Mr. Neil Stevenson. It's called objectivism. A modified form of Aristotle.
And so I never got around to actually reading those books. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I'm not knocking, but I just simply don't know what's in the book.
I know this is a little premature, but have you started on a new book yet, or have any ideas floating around?
Oh, it's not premature, but
He has one in mind.
the way it goes is that when a book
This is in 2008 he records this. This is the year of the financial crash, in case anyone else is just joining us and they only got access online the last 5 years. During the time of the last huge financial crash, I think how did Hilljack refer to it? Probably going to take a crash and reset and then get things back to order. You know, like the one that cost the huge fucking bailout, the bailout that was measured in trillions of dollars. That's when he's making this particular book ideas coming out in his head, and the book is called Reamed. I just linked the book.
gets finished, there's about a year of non-writing stuff that I have to do. So there's editing and copy editing and fixing little typos in the text, and there's
2011 he released
this, and then there's recovering from this. So
recovering, yeah.
during that time, it would be very frustrating if I got spun up on a new book project and got happy about it and excited about it, and was unable to do anything with it. So I deliberately placed myself into a condition of stupefaction for this period of my life, and I don't think about writing, and I try to do other things like changing the light bulbs in my house and
he writes a huge book, which is like the first.
I don't have the oil change.
The next book he writes, I can't overstress this, is the first book I think he ever wrote that would have been almost ready to go to a film screen. It's incredibly, it would have worked almost immediately on the film screen. There's no way it would have been made. It would have been cut to hell and gone. Maybe not too much, but it was the first thing he had written, and all the elements, if you liked his work, were in it. Oh, it was incredible. And yet, it won't be the first one that gets to the screen.
Van. I've got to do it myself, so hi, people on the screen. Yeah, I'm talking to you, laptop man.
Talking to you, laptop man. It might be me.
Okay. So, I mean, there are loose ideas floating around, but I have nothing going right now. Good question, though.
So how do you think about ending your stories? They seem to run the gamut from some that just where the action just ends, and others where there's the equivalent of a movie ending with a 10-minute car chase in it.
Well, I'm reasonably happy with all of my endings, but I know that some people feel differently. So,
to be quite honest, he did do an earlier book called Zodiac, which is possibly the greatest short novel he released. Better than Snow Crash. I haven't read Diamond Age. That's the one I haven't read. But Zodiac is actually quite good, and that's got a funny ending in it.
But as you've noticed, they're different. I mean, it's not always the same.
True.
The same thing. So all I can say is, different books end in different ways, and different people have different tastes in what they want to see. So I'm well aware that there are certain people are frustrated with the endings of some of my books. But I also think that it's one of these things where people's preconceived ideas sometimes drive the way they perceive things. So I've seen people complain, for example, that Snow Crash doesn't have a good ending. But I could remember at the time I was writing it, I told a friend of mine that the climax of Snow Crash was now longer than Moby Dick.
Yeah.
So, and you know, there's a helicopter that gets brought down, and there's a private jet that blows up, and you know, some people die, and you know, there's confrontations, and the girl goes home with her mom, and it seems like a good ending to me. So I think
Spoiler alert.
So my experience is that once you write a book or two with controversial endings and that meme gets going of Stevenson can't write endings, then that gets slapped onto everything you do, no matter how elaborate the ending is. For the Baroque cycle,
before he gets any further here, the elaborate ending, elaborate Stevenson's elaborate ending. He presents as a strong point. Presents one way, but has a strong point elsewhere.
You know, created a kind of NORAD bunker in which to write the ending. It was this complete, you know, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, they were completely covered with timelines and charts and all kinds of technology that I was using to bring all of the plot lines together into an end. So I think Anthem does okay on that score.
Yeah, not bad.
I'm sure that I'll be hearing from some of the Stevenson can't write endings people, but I think it's got a decent enough ending on this one. So.
Hi, I actually read Snow Crash as part of a class in college, and the class was on imaginary networks, and so we were drawing a lot of parallels between things in Snow Crash and recent developments like Second Life. And I was wondering,
recent developments in
like Second Life, for example.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just wondering I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but I was just wondering, since you wrote Snow Crash back in, was it 91, 92, what has been your response to things like Second Life and just a lot of changes that have happened in the way we use technology?
This guy was like at grad level or professor level during the 90s, during the tech revolution.
Technology and the internet.
That's when he was writing those books.
Yeah.
Which could have never been predicted.
Yeah, 89, 90-ish
Right.
is when I wrote it. I haven't been tracking it. Okay, so, I mean, I know it sounds funny, but I went on and wrote other stuff that didn't have anything to do with massively multiplayer virtual reality, and
the next book that he writes is about a massive multiplayer online role-playing universe.
I lost track of what was going on in that world. So I'm
The
aware.
very
of
next
something.
book he writes.
I hear from people who spend a lot of time there and think it's cool. I don't doubt that it is. I haven't been there myself. I haven't tried it. I've looked over the shoulders of a few people who were using it, but
Talking about Warcraft, right?
you know, as
He's talking entirely about Warcraft because the other topic when you talk about massive multiplayer online role-playing games is the fact that you can mine gold and convert some kind of mineral on the inside of the game to real-world dollars. In effect, Warcraft's gold mining is a digital currency.
time goes on, I notice that I'm spending really an inordinate amount of time sitting on my ass staring at pixels. And it's because you can do a lot of different things that way now. You can do your mail that way, you can read the newspaper that way, and many other things. And
The mail, your
I
newspaper.
just decided at a certain
Wow.
point that I had
Balance your checkbook.
you know, I didn't want to get involved in any new staring at pixel activities because there was a bunch of real world stuff that I wasn't getting done. And Second Life looked like, you know, I kept hearing from people that it was very involving, and I've
Can't
made
call
a
the
personal
game.
choice that I would avoid getting really excited about it. So my answer to your question is basically disappointing in that I don't know much about what's going on in that world now, and I don't have anything terribly intelligent to say about it. So,
Thank
sorry.
you.
Yeah, you're
His
welcome.
very next book is on the topic.
I used Broke Cycle as a quasi-textbook, kind of. I'm curious, how much
Okay.
time did you spend researching the material for that compared to writing the material?
He had 3 degrees.
Well, the way it usually goes with that kind of thing is that at the beginning you're just reading, and then you get to the point, and when I say you, I mean me, where you're maybe reading 90% of the time and writing 10% of the time, and then it kind of goes the other way. So by the end of it, I was only consulting reference materials when I had some incredibly specific thing that I needed to know about wigs or, you know, guns or something, because I kind of had the other knowledge, the maps and the books and so on that I needed. I would say that the just reading stuff part of it lasted maybe a year.
Curious other point I might add about the book that he's currently there to talk about. Anathem is his maths for English, for liberal. Anathem is his maths for liberal arts curiosity novel.
Maybe less, because there were some things I felt that I could go ahead and start writing during that time. And then I must have started working on the Baroque cycle around 2000. I finished it Christmas Eve 2004. So I guess that enables you to sort of bracket the amount of time I spent doing the research. I mean, when it's your full-time job, it goes faster. So, I mean, if that's all you do is think about periwigs for, you know, 2 months, you absorb a lot of knowledge about periwigs or whatever else it is that you're thinking about.
But yet
So
he doesn't play massive.
As your full-time
Multiple
job, can you
arrangements.
give us an idea of what the mechanics of your day look like when you're reading, writing,
Mechanics?
working from home, doing this?
Yeah, I get up, I have my tea, I read the paper, I go into my office, I check email quickly just to see if there's nothing, just to make sure there's nothing incredibly urgent that that's going to ruin my day. If my day hasn't been ruined by that point, I sit down and I pick up the 10 or 15 pages I wrote yesterday, and I write with a pen, so I pick up a different pen, and I edit those pages in a different color of ink, and then by the time I'm through to the end of that, I'm sort of getting spun up and ready to, I try to stop in the middle of chapters or in the middle of sections rather than stopping at the end of a sequence, because it's easier to get the momentum back if I do it that way. So
Know when to cut.
then if there's nothing that happens to interrupt me,
Oh yes, because I have also written a book, and I won't even sell it to you. I might give it away if you're that curious.
will write for
I can give it
2
away.
hours, maybe 3.
I'll go with that one. Giving it away for free doesn't hurt you.
And then I take eventually when the big stack of pages gets thick enough, I carry it over to the computer, I type it in using, lately I've been using Aquamax, the port of Emacs for OS 10, Mac OS 10.
So he's back on Mac, yeah.
Edit it that way, print it out as needed, read it.
I wonder how happy this guy is going to be with
So
what's
that's
happening
kind
in
of
California with the wildfires. I really wonder.
Welcome to Google, and thank you for coming. I'm here.
This is so relaxing when I don't have to decide who gets the microphone.
So my question goes back to, you mentioned attention span. And
Yeah.
I find Wikipedia, like sort of amusing in terms of attention span. I mean, it's comprised of these small snippets that people with like short attention span put together.
Yeah.
But yet when you go there, I mean, you can spend like hours going through it.
Hours
like,
and hours and hours.
And I compared that to, for example, reading Charles Babbage.
This is 10 years ago.
Opening of an exhibition like a little while ago in the Computer History Museum. They brought one of the difference engines reconstructed.
Yeah.
And I went back to the original, to his book, and it's fascinating reading, even after 200 years, like put together by one individual. So, what's your take on Wikipedia and like knowledge amalgamating itself into like this huge
Knowledge
chunks?
whatting itself?
Amalgamating
Okay.
itself into these chunks online, and then the other sub question.
Wow, wow.
The
English dude, the English major. Amalgamating. Thank you very much. Yeah, I like that word too.
Recommendation for a good read that you sort of liked.
Oh, okay. Well, by the time I get done pontificating about question one, I will have forgotten that.
Oh, short attention span. Check.
So I have this. So rather than just go off on Wikipedia.
Sorry.
Well,
please do. Someone begging for it.
Something I'm really interested in is the, and to some extent, this is going to sound really tired. Okay, so a lot of.
Okay, I haven't been old enough to get old enough to know how to read his old enough, but I'm beginning to suspect perhaps this guy is so far on the inside at this moment in time. He's a really successful actor. Sorry, writer, but actor in his way, who doesn't like doing book readings for companies like Amazon. And he still gives shit away for free.
This is going to sound pretty unsurprising and unoriginal, but I think there's something here. I'm interested in the kind of geekification of knowledge, and what I mean by that is that 50 years ago, the repositories of knowledge were paper books, and the brains of people who were basically paid to be university professors, researchers, and that was where you would go to get stuff you needed to know. And all of that is still there, but there's kind of this new phenomenon of networks of geeks on the internet who are geeks of a particular topic that they're interested in. Okay, so sometimes it can be very academic sorts of topics, but it can also be blue collar stuff. You know, like I saw some instructions lately on how to make your own springs. Okay, you got to temper the steel in a particular way, and a friend of mine, Charles Mann, author of 1491, and a number of other really cool books, related a story to me a few months ago about how in one of his books or articles he had made some statement, I think it was about Catholic theology, medieval Catholic theology, that really irritated some people who were geeks of medieval Catholic theology because they felt that it was just a repeat of an old falsehood that had been perpetuated for way too long, and they're just sick of it. They're sick of hearing that, and they were irritated that he had fallen for it, and so suddenly he's getting emails from these
Of course,
people. And
the geeks themselves, the ones who are so sick and tired, and how long, oh Lord, how long, these Catholic geeks. They're only 30, 40 years, 50 years at very most. They have not been alive since it was anciently used to be that sick and tired of it.
Back, and but being the kind of guy he is, Charles went and looked it up and determined that these people were right.
Oh, of course they're right.
And you know, they're not kind of random.
How right were they?
Conspiracy
They're
theories.
like Lauren Southern lefty right, or were they more Faith Goldie openly right?
But you know, they're sort of very learned and qualified people, and so he fixed it. You know, he admitted that he was wrong, and he fixed it. And then after that, they decided that he was a cool guy after all. And I'm sure that what I've just described is kind of a recognizable phenomenon to everyone in this room. It's not only happening with medieval Catholic theology, but it's happening with many, many other topics. And
if I may be so bold, actually, before we get much further here, I'll tell you a story about my copy of Reamed. I posted a link to in the chat here just about 6 or 7 messages ago. The link which I posted there, I myself had a copy of this damn book. I mean, I liked the book. It was fun. Like I say, I thought it was the first one would be suitable to make a movie from. However, I gave away the copy that I had shortly after reading it. I had I bought a hardcover copy late in its season, so as to spend less on the hardcover in preference to the softcover second edition. But anyhow, I gave away the copy that I had to somebody else to pass along the joy of knowing what it was, which the PTB were currently planning.
So I swing back and forth between being depressed about the way that traditional knowledge-carrying institutions are kind of falling apart and not doing their job right, and being fascinated by how their work is being taken over by these networks of geeks. And I think that within those networks of geeks that the quality of the...
In order to get an equal value against all possible demographics, he starts by establishing the problem. I don't want to call them problem, are geeks. It's people that are that old to be considered geeks. You don't call a really old person a geek. Not a really, really old person, I mean. Not unless they legitimately bit the heads off of chickens. But younger people, they're some form of geek or another. It's not only how smart they are.
Exchanging is probably higher because a Wikipedia page is a static thing, and unless you're deliberately watching that page, it can be changed without your kind of knowing it. Whereas if it's an active conversation, if it's live, and you're part of that conversation and you say something that's wrong, people are just going to jump down your throat immediately and start writing you emails in all capital letters telling you how wrong you are, right? And a lot of that's noise and crap, and it's but somehow that, I think, works as a way of preserving knowledge about any number of arcane subjects, or even non-arcane subjects, and that it is going to turn into something in the long run. So that's kind of the, I guess, frame of reference from which I'm trying to think about these issues right now. And I can relate it to a lot of other stuff too, but I should probably be a little more interactive. The second part of your question was stuff to read. The last novel I read was The Glass Books of the Dream Eaters by Gordon Dahlquist. The Glass Books of the Dream Eaters. It's a sort of steampunk Victorian novel. I enjoyed it quite a bit. rarely miss an opportunity to plug the works of Matt Ruff, R-U-F-F, or Etgar Keret, K-E-R-E-T, who's an Israeli short fiction writer who does amazing things, things I can't comprehend, like writing short things. So I admire him for that, if nothing else.
For the brevity.
He really is brilliant. If I think of other
how long, oh Lord, how long?
of other things, I'll mention them. I read a lot of history, so a lot of what I read isn't current. So I love reading the works of Edward Gibbon, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, because he's such an amazing prose stylist, and he's so opinionated and so mean. So anyway, those are some ideas. So we should probably move on to another question.
Hi, I think I'm
you have
next.
the microphone.
I'm in charge.
Oh,
Okay.
no, you have the microphone too. Okay.
Sorry.
The
Okay,
two
I'll go
microphone
first.
problem.
So based on the description of your new book, I can't help but draw a parallel to the culture wars which are going on right now, the so-called culture wars, and a certain election that's upcoming, which is drawing quite a bit of press at the moment. And I'm wondering if you intended any kind of commentary on what's going on right now in society between people who might prefer a big box store and those who might prefer a good book.
Prefer a what or a what?
Well, if people have the choice
Prefer a big box store or a good book.
between a big box store, going there for a Sunday afternoon,
Oh,
or reading a good book,
I see. Yeah.
I think society would be fairly split.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's necessary to be a bit careful because if you get out and out political in works of art, then it stops being art incredibly fast.
Does it really stop being art though, Neil? Does it really stop being art? Because art is sometimes offensive. And whether or not it's political is up to the person who's in the audience, not the person who's creating the art. If he's insisting that you have no agenda whatsoever when you're creating your art, then he's insane. How do you clean yourself of your agenda before ever you make art? Up yours, Mr. Stevenson, up yours.
And it also stops being popular incredibly fast.
Tell that to Banksy, dude.
So
Tell that to Banksy.
I'm trying to make art that's popular. So
Tell that to Banksy, dude.
So I try to leave it to the reader to make those kinds of connections. It's pretty obvious to me that we're suffering in tangible and knowable ways from short attention span. Short attention span.
I don't know, man. I don't know. A lot of this umming, as in Harvard, just hands in pockets. Looks like he might have been caught doing something he shouldn't.
Thinking and behavior.
Like I said, he went to MIT, not Harvard either.
Just the whole global warming thing alone is kind of a clear example of that. But you see it all the time in people's tendency to latch on to short-term gratification in order to make policies or to plan things. I mean, the whole credit crunch right now is another example. It's just I don't know.
The bailout, you mean? The bailout was going to occur like within 6 months of this point in time, or a year?
I don't know if anybody's tried to sit down and figure out how much the whole credit debacle is costing, but you know, it must be an unbelievable amount of money, and it's
it was
traceable
actually predictable,
to
Neil.
people just trying to get short-term advantage in these markets and not thinking about the long-term consequences. So it's a
I don't agree. I don't disagree with the last point.
expensive problem to the point of almost looking like
I agree.
kind of cultural suicide. And and maybe that's exactly what it is. I mean, maybe we won't even be around. Maybe this culture won't even be around in 100 years because of this problem. So I thought that was worth writing a book about.
That's Anthem.
Having
But
said
Reamed
all
is the
that,
other one.
I'd rather kind of leave it at that pretty high level and not try to...
Reamed is the book he wrote right after. I guess whenever it dawned on him, as it dawned on the rest of us 3 years before then, I mean, there were people screaming bloody murder right up until the time Obama took office and then instituted the bailout.
Mention any
But
specific examples.
he voted Obama.
Specific examples of recent policy decisions that might have been made differently if people were thinking a little harder. Does that answer your question?
I imagine he voted Obama.
Was there a second part?
I can't say I didn't.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, you know, maybe I'm
So if
wrong.
you had to choose between a big
Short
box
term.
store and reading a good book on a Sunday afternoon, which would you go for?
Yeah, well, that's not too hard. I mean, you know, I can give you the answer that makes me look good, which is, oh yes, I'll read the great book. But the fact is, I don't read as much as I used to, and I'm trying to change that.
Wow. Kat asked him a question which had just the right what in it. I'll tell you what, the right metadata, which takes a head like his and fractures every specific question into an unanswerable myriad of replies. He knows he's got to answer one, and he says, I can answer one way, I can answer another way, depending on my situation.
But it's very difficult once you're used to emailing and being on top of things all the time. It's
box stores, Amazon's not really far apart anymore.
Amazingly difficult to draw back from that and have long slabs of book reading time.
I really should be reading books.
Howdy.
Hi.
So you mentioned your NORAD bunker with timelines and all such mechanisms and systems and devices by which you organize your conclusions to the book, also the middle of the book. So I was about to ask, how have such systems evolved over time? Your own ideas, influences from other people. But you just mentioned your desire to write popular books. And so is that another input in how you
Popular books?
go about the process of writing, of choosing what happens in your books?
Well, the novel is
It's a strange kind of question you got asked there. And if he Neil Stephenson himself ever went back through this interview question answer period that he conducted with these group of people at Google some point in the past. This is not coming to my house tonight. You can hear it? Sounds like a fire truck or two. As he conducts this interview, he might have actually learned something from that question, because after releasing the next book, he changed his style of interaction and creation entirely. Right up until now, when he's releasing yet another breakthrough set of whatever, along with a technological company called Magic Leap, which is also doing its own thing. Wild, right?
pop culture medium.
I'll be right back.
We don't think of it that way all the time because it kind of got turned into a fine art during the 20th century. But in the 19th century, it was like comic books or something. People would famously line up around the block to get the latest issue of the latest chapter of a Dickens novel. And when the Old Curiosity Shop, which is a Dickens book about an orphan named Nell, was being serialized, the ship when the last chapter was still pending, and it wasn't clear whether Nell was going to live or die, the ship that was carrying the last chapter of the book from England to the United States was met by people standing on the pier shouting, you know, is Nell alive or is she dead? And I think in Bleak House, Dickens used a real house, an identifiable house, as the home of the bad guy. After a chapter of the book was released in which that bad guy did something really bad, and angry mom gathered in front of this house because they could tell which house it was, and Charles Dickens had to go out onto the balcony and calm them all down and tell them that it was all pretend. Okay. So, you know, and Dumas, Alexander Dumas, was another one of these guys. He went to visit a publisher once and in Paris and had a fantastic dinner, you know, the best that Paris could provide. And then the publisher said, well, we've remodeled our house. We'd like to show you around. Will you come on a little tour? And so, oh, of course, you know, so they walk around the house, and he's showing them the bed chambers upstairs. They get to the door of a bed chamber, and the publisher says, well, what do you think of this?
What is this guy saying anyway?
Oh, it's beautiful. And the publisher says, good, you can't leave until you've written me this book. And he pushes him in, shoves the door, locks it, and proceeds to bring out more excellent French food and wine, you know, kind of like the Google cafeteria, I guess, until Dumas has finished the novel he had promised him. So that's all sort of a huge...
culture of Google changing.
Probably annoying digression, but the point is that that the novel is fundamentally a pop culture medium, and I don't think it works very well unless it's a good yarn. Okay, personally, I don't get into a book. I don't read it unless it's a good yarn, and that means that it's got to have characters that you care about, and it's got to have a good story.
That's how you put it.
And so, when I say that, that's what I mean when I say that being popular is part of it. All I really mean is that
Intensely aware
I'm trying
of
to
how
have
he has
it be
17 national background
a good yarn
in his
that
own
people
family
will
alone.
get into, and that if I fail at that, I feel like I'm not doing my job. So
that's actually.
It's
actually rather possible as a
digression.
theory.
I think in a recent Wired article, they
I
actually
mean it as a
described
joke.
you as a bit Pinchonian in your writing, which I think is probably talking about complexity. So how do you kind of decide how much you're going to digress and go off on these descriptions of things like Van Eyck freaking when you're writing the book?
Like
versus,
what? Oh, Van Eyck freaking?
Versus, yeah, just moving the plot forward and being simplistic.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Van Eyck freaking turns out to be a kind of hinge pin of the plot of Cryptonomicon. I mean,
why it needs to be explained.
I couldn't get to the end of that book, the lousy end of that book.
Yeah, it wasn't lousy.
Unless I could invoke Van Eyck freaking. So it's set up in one part of the book early on where it seems like a digression, and then later on it turns out to be integral to the plot. And there's a fair amount of that, I must warn you, in Anathem. So I keep hearing from people who read the book, and on their way through they think, well, okay, this is all well and good, but it's full of digressions. I'm just getting sick of all these digressions. And then later on, it turns out that most of them relate. So that's not to say that I don't engage in digressions, but I have tried to curtail that tendency and to only do it when what looks like a digression is actually going to be relevant
to the long-term experience. And he got pretty good at figuring that out too.
Think of,
but it wasn't that bad in Cryptonomicon, so what the fuck is he apologizing for?
Some examples in earlier books where I totally failed to do that, but I'm trying to get that under control a little bit.
Well, I'm trying to get that under control. Oh, I see. He's a libertarian.
Oh, well.
He identifies as a libertarian.
So, for example, the Captain Crunch thing in Cryptonomicon is clearly a digression. Okay. So I think if people can enjoy those if they're not too long and if they're funny.
Fair.
But I try to tie it all in with the actual book. Microphone's over.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
First of all, can you pronounce this, please?
No.
Hang on a second. I didn't hear this shit. I want to hear this. I think I've listened to this in the past. I was considering since 2008, quite a long time. Heck, I can't even remember what the story was then. Had Google purchased YouTube at that point? This is Talks at Google. This could be one of those Google videos. You remember those? Google video. No, that's pop-up. But Talks at Google might have been its own internal video format and file, which had like a ability to handle very long documents. I watched almost all the early Alex Jones work on Google Video.
Because I didn't grow up there.
Oh.
Well,
it's a fictional place.
Okay, so another question I have is, I found it fascinating that your earlier books were set in the future. Cryptonomicon was like current age World War II, and then Baroque Cycle was in the past with Sir Isaac Newton time.
Yeah.
So what was the driving factor behind this kind of reverse chronology, the chronology behind your writing?
It's completely random. There was a conscious decision
arbitrary
with
means.
Cryptonomicon that since science fiction as a movement was coming to grips with IT,
yes,
and trying to bring, science fiction missed IT for a while, and then cyberpunk was science fiction playing catch up. So, wait a second, this is really important. And so it seemed reasonable to go back and as part of that, to look at the beginnings of IT, which Gibson and Sterling did that in the Difference Engine. And in Cryptonomicon, I'm looking at some more recent IT history with Turing and so on, Adon Assoff. But in the course of doing that, I just happened to learn that from George Dyson's book, Darwin Among the Machines, I learned that Leibniz had done pioneering work in information technology more than 300 years ago, which came as a complete surprise to me.
Whoa!
And
that means that the other guy who came up with calculus at the exact same time that Isaac Newton came up with calculus, rather than playing it Newton's way, he actually started doing useful things with the calculus itself. Oh!
I had to do something about that. So the fact that I went back in time and wrote that was not part of a plan. It was just that I got really interested in this amazing fact that IT has a much deeper history than we thought it did, and I wanted to address that in fiction.
Sort of along the same lines, in a fit of absent-mindedness in college, I got a history degree, and I really enjoyed reading.
You gotta pay attention, or you'll end up with a history degree.
And one of the reasons I'm a huge fanboy for the Baroque Cycle. I think one of the reasons is because the stuff that was clearly real, that really happened, I felt it really lined up with all the stuff that my props tried to make me think. And the thing that I thought was interesting is I felt in the third book, I felt you kind of tipped your hand a bit and said, look, I'm self-conscious here. This history painting, of the Comstock family is sort of a mapping of what I'm doing with my book. You can tell me I'm wrong if you think that, but the question I had was...
What he means by that, it's incredibly important that you don't have to read the book. The history painting of the Comstock family. Idiot doesn't allow for... should have put into that there's two classes, friends, of Comstock. Comstock, as in common stock. There's the silver. I gotta write these out. There are the silver and gold Comstock families. And Stevenson writes a history of the Waterhouse family.
When you're you're obviously trying to teach us something when you write these books. And my question is, when you introduce artificial characters and have them interact with real characters, Is that something you find is easy for you? Do you find that you get tormented about how much stuff you should introduce from your own imagination? Or do you just find it works when you sit down and start writing?
I don't recall being ever tormented at all. So it's a zero torment process, which is good since I do it for a living.
He doesn't like reading books in public, though.
You know, in the case of Cryptonomicon and the Baroque Cycle, the real characters were people like Turing and Newton and Leibniz, and Hooke, people I can learn about. I can get a sense of how other people saw them, but I'm reluctant to try to make them the main point of view characters because I don't think I'm smart enough. And it seems safer and easier to instead have characters who are maybe roughly as smart as I am and who are trying to talk to them and seeing those real historical figures through their eyes. I
mean, quite obviously, Leibniz was smarter than he is, from his own estimation.
And I feel safer with that.
His own
because then
estimation
I can get
imagination.
inside the heads of my fictional characters. You know, that's safe. That works. I can. And I can describe the way that, say, Isaac Newton seemed to other people, and that's reasonably safe too, because people who knew him, you know, wrote down their impressions of the man. And so that approach kind of worked for me, and that's just how I did it.
Follow other leads. Okay.
I've always been really into your books because of, well, what I like to think is your engineering background, your sort of taste for complex systems, and the topics you used to write about. And I mean, you addressed this a little in the digressions point earlier, but I'm kind of curious that as an engineer who went to the other side in some way, since you've had an engineering career and a writing career, how do those things kind of relate to each other for you?
Well, I didn't have an engineering career. I never have been paid. Well.
NDA.
I didn't have an engineering career before a writing career.
There was an NDA there. I bet you I'll put a fucking $5 bill on it if you want to engage in that. He had an engineering career. He had an NDA he can't mention. That's his normal way of getting around the NDA. Never had an engineering career.
I didn't have an engineering career before a writing career.
Thank you. Writing first,
you know,
then an engineering
I grew up in
career.
that kind of environment. I absorbed a lot of that mindset. But
his parents or his family's careers go back to 17th, 18th, 19th centuries.
But as it happened, my book writing career got going before I had to actually get a job, so, or at least that kind of a job. I don't know. This is one of these questions that forces me to be really self-conscious and self-aware, right? Which
he's under contractual obligations here.
Is a fine thing to do. I've heard people recommend it, but I find it kind of to be the enemy of literary progress. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of thing. I will tell you that in order for me to make progress, I have to stop working around noon and then go do kind of nerdy stuff for the rest of the day that's completely unrelated to the book project. And that can
He is currently working as an engineer.
be many different kinds of things. It can be programming or welding or fixing the wire.
He sometimes works for a company called Magic Leap, which has become public knowledge in the last 10 years.
Wiring in my house, but for whatever reason, I've got to do something that is kind of absorbing and technical and hands-on during about half of the day to allow the book writing thing to let certain background processes operate. And if I'm thinking too hard about them, they won't do that.
So far, your major works have avoided an outer space setting.
Anathem's got some.
Intentional choice, or something that you might try in the future?
It's in Anathem.
It's the taste of it in Anathem.
So.
But that's it. It's not all. It's just a little taste. That's it.
So it's there. It's already happened.
Oh, okay. Covered the demo. Thank you.
So, Cryptonomicon, whether you intended it to or not, became somewhat of a poster child for people who really believed in cryptographic anarchism and that kind of electronic digital.
Crypto anarchism and or libertarianism. This guy identified as a libertarian ever since 2011.
Currency. And rather than dying at the hands of government, that sort of died at the feet of apathy. Did you
died of what?
It died at the feet of apathy, rather than anybody actually killing it.
Yeah.
Did you really believe in that, and did you anticipate that nobody would care?
Well, what happened was that I used to come down here from time to time and hang out with people, and I came down once, and everyone.
You said work for the CIA. Okay.
I was talking about crypto. And I came down 6 months later, and everyone was talking about money and how to use crypto to make money, not in the sense of reaping profit, but in the sense of actually doing currency, or creating currencies. And
his very next book.
That seemed interesting, and so I started thinking about that, and Cryptonomicon was the result. It's not an attempt to push.
Oh, that's right, because the book about cryptocurrencies he wrote 2 decades ago, and I read it around 2 decades ago, and it was quite good 2 decades ago, but everybody hated the ending. Everybody hated the ending. I actually kind of like the ending.
Necessarily believe
crazy.
I got where these guys were coming from, I think, and sort of have always tended to sympathize more with a kind of libertarian political point of view than the opposite.
Than the anarcho-syndicalist lefty.
A bit in the work, but
Antifa, no. SJW.
If I had been trying to push a political viewpoint, I probably would have done something different. It's more an attempt.
Identitarian? No, I don't think so. But he's kind of in with the identitarian crowd.
Those kinds of people in a basically sympathetic light. And by sympathetic, I don't even necessarily mean that I'm proselytizing in favor of what they believe, but just trying to say, look, to those of you who aren't of this world, people like this may seem very difficult to understand and weird and geeky, but they're not. They're human beings with the usual set of interests and passions and problems.
And failings and anything else. So I also want to say right here, right now, I have enjoyed almost everything I've ever read by this person. Neil Stephenson's a fine writer. If he comes across as not being able to communicate particularly well in public, that might be why he's a better writer than he is a speaker. He spends more time working that craft out, including an editing process, which he doesn't get the benefit of using here. And to think on one's feet in the emerging technological culture he finds himself in Mountain View, California, Google headquarters, the culture which he's dealing with at that time, 10 years ago, makes it difficult for him to say what he really thinks.
That's mostly what Cryptonomicon is about.
True. And that was 20 years before.
First, I wanted to thank you for the tangents we've sort of brought up today a bit.
God, it's taken me a while.
I know, it's hard.
So when you get the mic and you start asking a question,
Here I am.
Yeah, thank you.
Isaac or something like
Thanks.
that. So
I thought about something else. Mockingbird or Milton Bradley. Games we play with initials.
So first, I wanted to thank you for making some very technical issues that are sort of commonplace in society today very accessible to some people. The tangents that you provide sometimes are great. Like, I actually think that your description of modular arithmetic in Cryptonomicon is the best, far better than anything I've ever
Excuse me. The bicycle chain?
Yes, fantastic.
It is excellent.
Hearkening to that.
It is excellent. Yes, the engineer is correct.
Real elements that you put in.
By the way, Turing really did have a bicycle leg.
Yes.
So that was actually a real.
It's part of his life.
I described it, but I didn't make it up.
That only reinforces my topic.
That only reinforces it.
Which is that there are a lot of elements. I mean, clearly you do a lot of research for your writing, and there are a lot of non-fictional elements that play roles in your stories. Sometimes these are very challenging issues. There are seriously gritty elements to your writing. I mean, there were parts of Quicksilver that were very difficult for me to read, especially with respect to gender roles and just things that transpired between people, power issues. Power issues are amazing in that series, just between, I mean, people who are royalty or simply have power over other people. Where do you decide those lines?
Where do I do what?
Where do you decide those lines? Just how far to push? Because you can make your readers very uncomfortable. And some of that's really useful because it's true. But it also, it pushes a boundary.
Well, I think it's just all a matter of what I said earlier, of trying to write a good yarn. And
I said that he was an SJW, right? Well, he just got a really SJW question. More SJW than he seems to be presenting.
You don't get dramatic tension in a story unless there's some discomfort.
How do you tell social justice warriors it's called Bertolt Brecht? You shouldn't have to say these things. Bertolt Brecht, idiot. That's how Greg House would take care of this.
Source of anxiety or wanting to know how it turns out.
Give him a little Bertolt Brecht and a couple of Vicodin and call me in the morning.
I have that, but if you take it too far, it can become too unpleasant to get through. So, I mean, I'm reading a novel now, which I won't specify what it is, but it's got some really good bad guys in it, and several of them, and they're starting to get so bad that I'm finding myself, I'm finding excuses not to read the book now because I hate them so much, and it just gets me upset when they go out and do their bad guy things. So I think it, comes down to.
See, the guy who asked the question has never encountered Kurt Vonnegut's 9 rules for writing good fiction. I don't know, maybe Neil Stephenson hasn't either. I find it difficult to believe that, but the 9 rules of Kurt Vonnegut. Jr. for writing good fiction. One of those rules is that you make really bad things happen to the people that you care about the most, the ones you're writing about, to show what it is they're made of.
I mean, you've got the author has to make basically judgments of taste to.
And I could criticize Vonnegut's way of going about it as being really Hegelian, but it really works. So photography is really Hegelian, but it still works.
Decide how far to push it, how much is too much, and of course not everyone's tastes are in alignment. So in some cases, I may exceed the boundaries of good taste for certain readers, but the hope is that I'm within those boundaries for enough readers to like the book, and
So all of your books generally have pretty big thematic questions. In Snow Crash, it's the ideas of virtual reality and religion.
in Baroque Cycle and Cryptonomicon, it's the economics and the computation. When you're brainstorming a new book, do you start with the questions do you want to explore and then build a yarn out of it, or do you start with the yarn and build questions into it as you go?
Questions sometimes they occur by themselves.
I think that
you don't have to list down the questions before you re-encounter the very questions as the characters that you've already. The characters set. You have to just draw up a list of characters, same as anything else. He started all of those bigger books, the longer books, the historical books. They're like, sorry to use the word like, they're set up very much as in a Shakespearean play. There's historical dramas, and then there's tragedies, and then there's comedies, and then there's, what was the other type? Histories, tragedies, dramas, tragedies, comedies. He might have had something else thrown in. Anyway, Stevenson puts in a dramatis personae as his first page in all of his books, explaining who the characters are first in relationship to one another.
First of all, every book is a little different, so there's not necessarily an answer that applies to all books. It's kind of a catch-as-catch-can thing. You don't always get everything to line up at the same time, and so...
In fact, of those bigger books, they're each subdivided into smaller sub-novels which you can purchase separately if you wish.
In the case
you
of...
you can buy the whole thing, or you can buy little bits of it. Figure that out, huh?
Of the most recent book of Anathem, you know, that started out with some specific themes, but I knew that those were sufficiently abstract that it would be a waste of time for me to pursue the project if I couldn't get some characters and some interesting storyline around it. So in that case, rather than starting from a big kind of schematic outline of the book, I began by reading, by just trying to write some conversations and to tell some little stories about the lives of these people and build the characters a little bit. And as that went on, I started to develop a little bit of confidence that maybe I had some good characters and had the potential to tell a good story. But for other books, it might be a different process altogether. Sometimes you just kind of get the feeling that it's working. And by you, I mean me.
So I've noticed that a lot of sci-fi fantasy authors will...
I'm going to back that up again. Allow that little chuckle at the end to sink in. He used language in a suggestive manner with Google and had to beg their pardon for it.
Develop a little bit of confidence that maybe I had some good characters and had the potential to tell a good story. But for other books, it might be a different process altogether.
Here it comes.
Sometimes you just kind of get the feeling that...
Sometimes you just kind of... So he used the word just as well. That would have been one of my trigger words. My own personal trigger word. I don't like you. I hate using the word, let alone hearing it. You just kind of... He wants to let them know that there's a self-awareness involved when you're writing something that you yourself recognize. I think this will be fun for other people too.
It's working. And by you, I mean me.
So when using the word you there is actually problematic, which stopped them. It's to suggest how someone else should directly feel, which the media does all the time. The media does it all the time. He won't. The media does.
So I've noticed that a lot of sci-fi fantasy authors will create one fictional universe in which they tell a lot of tales, and others will always create a new universe every time. With the exception of your historical fiction, it seems that you fall into the latter category. Have you ever been tempted to go back into the universe of Snow Crash and tell another story about someone else, or do you really feel that you want to start fresh every time?
Well, my general policy is that if I've got a new idea, I go with the new idea, rather than trying to build a series. And so far, it tends to be the case that I'll have a new idea. It just seems a little healthier to proceed that way. Doesn't mean I can't ever go back, but I guess I have kind of a irrational fear of getting stuck in some kind of rut of writing big, long series of books in the same universe, and that's kind of my safety policy.
So, before we sign off, I had a quick and almost frivolous but still very important question. Since you write everything longhand, what's your favorite kind of pen?
I use different pens for different things. I have a Jorg Heisek, which is an...
He has time to write long books in longhand, by hand first.
Incredibly...
And he's a technology guru.
Kind of fancy pen that I would never go out and buy, but somebody gave it to me. It's carbon fiber and, you know, plutonium or something. I don't really know what it's made of. And I tend to use that for first draft stuff because it's got a fat nib and I can't physically carry it around.
It's got a fat nib. I bet he says that to all the chicks. It's got a fat nib.
Because it doesn't have a clip. It comes in a holster that's sewn together from hides of endangered...
Here we go, right? Here we go.
So,
chance to use a little hyperbole. Everybody's happy.
So that just has to sit on the desk. I can't carry it away.
Holster.
And that works really nicely. And then I've got this old Waterman that I've had for 25 years that I use. It's finer nib. I use it for editing. I've got a rote ring. I've got another Waterman. So it's just, I haven't settled on any one, I guess. That's the perfect pen. So.
Well, we're about out of time, but thanks again for coming.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
He's an incredibly important actor at this very moment in time, and he is the one who likes the media the least, I believe. He's a prolific writer, a very prolific writer, and if you pay him money, and sometimes if you don't pay him money, he'll tell you why. His requirement is that you understand how to read. If you believe him or not is up to yourself. You can check his work. He's got some really good understandings, I think he's got some really good explanations for how to think about certain things. Cryptocurrency might be one of them. Why he's playing for the team he's playing for, I have no idea. So that's Neil Stevenson. I got a fat nib, yo. I'm gonna pop that back in here. Pop out. Did it get totally wiped? No, it did not. Looks like I'm reading only myself on the channel here this evening. It's Friday evening. I ain't too worried about the change in the weather. I was outside last night. This is what I'm going to finish off this early stream with. I was outside last night when the weather changed. What do I mean? Well, I was outside as a rainstorm. A series of low pressure systems converged offshore from my current location, probably to the southeast, and headed away in a startlingly quick direction. I thought for a moment maybe the top of my house would blow away. I thought also, my goodness, how lucky we are. It's about 5 or 10 degrees above zero. Immediately, on my last observation outdoors, as I was standing out on the doorstep getting soaked, as the rains were pouring down veritably around me, the immediate moment that the weather changed, that the pressure system passed, I was there for it. Could feel the temperatures dropping, can think to myself, ha ha ha, we've escaped another big ass 3-day blizzard once more, and only to wonder what's going to be coming down the pipe in the new year. If you're new to the channel, thanks for watching. My name is James PFP. Share the early part of this video. Share the early part of the stream. It matters. Stuff about Faith Goldie, for damn sure. And we'll be back again later this evening.